Welcome to a very special episode of Marvel Podcast Finland. I am, as you know, Ossi Kuvakarju. With me, as always, is my wonderful co-host
Mhm.
Leffahullu Nikke. Nikke, how are you?
Uh, I'm very good right now because we have great quest tonight.
Exactly. As you all our lovely listeners can hear, we are speaking in English because our guest apparently hasn't learned Finnish yet,
I'm trying
which is
so hard.
it is ridiculously hard language. So we are using this more simple old way of communications called English. We have here comic book writer Torunn Grønbekk. Welcome to our podcast. How are
Thank
you
you so
today?
much. I'm great. It's lovely to be here. Very excited to talk about comics, especially with the Finns.
Oh, thank you. That is really nice to hear, and we do our best to uh, be worthy of that expectation, whatever it is.
And I will do my best not to say anything so awful or embarrassing that this sort of, turns into one of those episodes.
Yeah, but then again, if this does turn into one of those episodes, I think it could be really good for our listening and viewing numbers because we are not that big yet.
Oh
So,
yeah, that's good.
so
I once did a podcast where I sort of mimed the sex act, and then I was like, that couldn't possibly be appropriate, could it?
mm,
I can't imagine. But it's out there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that sounds completely appropriate. I mean, I assume that as in Finland, in Norway too, like we aren't that like prudish about
Oh,
nudity, like compared to like somewhere maybe over the seas. Uh,
oh,
but
it is a
yeah,
fascinating thing when you see it. Like I did a Warhammer book for Marvel,
yeah.
and we had Slanesh as the sort of main sort of villainy god. And obviously Slanesh is in the Warhammer lore is sort of the god of depravity and fucking and all the good stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And at some point, like I was like, yeah, but we do need to have a bit of it. We need to sort of reference it. And they're like, no, you can do whatever, like as violent as you want. Just go for it. Kill as many people as you want, but just not even a hint of anything. And I left some jokes in there, and they didn't catch it until the lettering stage, and they were very sort of vague, and there was a lot of plausible deniability. But they were like, "Is this referencing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't know. Gotta go. It's
Yeah,
just how it is."
that is so like funny to me, like this, like exactly what you say, like massive, absolutely brutal violence, like blood everywhere, gore, whatever you, but a little bit of nudity, little bit of mention of sex, like oh my God, then it's like pray to
Yeah.
God, like save us and
And I thought it was sort of funny. I bought someone's comic book collection a couple of years ago, and it was mostly because they had like a few albums on the top where I was like, oh, I want these, so I'll just get the entire thing. And it was mostly like comic porn from the 70s and 80s, a bunch of Finnish stuff, in fact, which
oh
I mean, and I enjoyed profoundly, even if
yeah,
I didn't understand anything, except the very beautiful visuals. And I
oh
realized, like, I'm sure most of the, at least sort of the Western comic industry, is sort of ran a bit of the fact that there's some titties from time to
yeah,
time. But yeah,
Mhm.
but not in America. That's where we draw the line.
exactly. Uh, in case some of our listeners don't actually know about your work, could you give us a little introduction of yourself? I know we already started running, but
Oh yeah, sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that would probably. I don't know. I write comic books for mostly for Marvel and DC comics. I started writing for Marvel 7 years ago or something.
Mm,
Um, and I've written like I started with Valkyries, so
mm,
in the sort of Thor universe. So I
Yeah.
did Jane Foster and the Mighty Valkyries, and I've written some Thor, I've written some Punisher. Carnage lately.
Mhm.
I was writing Venom last year. Right now I'm writing Spider-Girl and Catwoman for DC.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I've read some of those and really enjoyed them. I want to jump right away to Thor because I find it really interesting to know if you can enlighten what do like Norwegians in generally think about the Marvel character Thor because it is based on sort of like old Norse mythology. So like what is usually like do they think it's a complete joke? Do they find it disrespectful, respectful, or where is there like consensus on that?
I'm not sure disrespectful would be the word, but the thing is, like, I come from a family where we take the Norse myths very sort of seriously.
Yeah.
Like, I'm named after Thor.
Mm,
All my siblings have Norse names, and we sort of grew up with a mother who would tell us not only the myths, but she would be like, there's a mountain not far from here, where because of
mm,
the sort of the mountain range, there's a lot of weather activity right there. So a lot of the time there will be a rainbow on the mountain. So I grew up being like, there's the Bifrost.
mm.
Um, and the thing is, like, my mom, at some point when I was sort of explaining Jason's run
Mm.
on Thor and what had happened, and I told her that he destroyed Yggdrasil, and she was like, "What?" Like, and that, so she hasn't read any of it.
Okay.
She's just pissed off. But I think it's an interesting thing when you have like Thor. I think people in general have like the if you go by the myths, he's a bit stupider
Mm.
than in the comics. So we do sort of add a few layers of things. And the Americans have sort of dumbed down some of the aspects of the awfulness of
Mm.
like the Valkyries. They are like, if you get into the actual lore of the Valkyries, it's very sort of heavy metal in a lot of ways. But we sort of went, oh, they have horses and they, fuck around and do whatever. While if you were to go by the myths, it would have been a lot more like a brutal thing.
Mm.
But I think when you have people who are into Marvel, they don't mind.
Mm. Of course.
But I will say that when people ask me, so what do you do? And I go, well, I write comic books. They usually go, oh, those in the newspaper? And I say, no, the comic books with, the Marvel thing. And they're like, oh, right. Okay. And then that's the end of the sort of
Oh, okay.
conversation. Yeah, it's very fun. And then
Okay.
sometimes I can get them in because I wrote a small thing, like a Darth Vader thing.
Mm.
And that's like one of the fandoms that I can sort of bring people in and be like, so what about Star Wars? And then maybe they'll sort of awaken a bit.
Yeah.
But most of the time is like comics in Norway is either like the newspaper thing or like graphic novels, very much sort of one person sitting there making their epic. So when
Yeah.
I go, well, I don't even draw the thing, they're like, oh, right, so you're just, what do you do? And it's a whole thing. So that's one
Yeah.
of the things that I found really interesting about going to Finland, because it seemed to be like they have, like you guys seem to have a lot more, you seem to be a lot more in touch with the rest of the world in the sort of the comic industry. And it seemed to be a lot of sort of hungry, cool comic people making really interesting things for both the Finnish, but also things that could do very well on the international market. Which was for reference, I was in Finland in, I want to say, May.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Mm. Uh, I have to confess, I think you know at least about Finnish comics books better than me because I'm not like that uh, well versed in the subject. I'm still trying slowly get more into it, but there's so much to read in the world. So
Sure, and I would
yeah.
tell you like what I like, except I can't pronounce any of the names, and it would be like, that dude with the beard and the hair, like it's
Oh
you know
yeah,
that
that
dude.
guy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He
yeah.
was great. There was a dude who he gave me his comic, but he also showed me his entire sort of knife collection that he was wearing, and I thought like this would never happen in America. This is an interesting place. But I was lucky enough because I was there just at the Comic-Con, and I always tried to sort of pick up a few things from the local scene, but I was gifted a bunch of comics and I read them on the flight home, and I was just like, this is awesome. And I hope, there's I know it's hard to get things out on the market for everyone these days, but I do hope you can sort of get them out there.
Yeah, definitely. And it's great that they do have like conventions like that. And we actually had like this moment where the Comic Con you visited here, it was like the last one. They actually canceled the whole convention, but now I think another company
Yeah.
picked it up, or there's this like another. I think it's what is it called? Arctic Comic Con or something like that.
Yeah,
That's like
Arctic Lights Comic Con or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is actually like picking it up from where this Heroes Comic Con left off, because before we haven't had that much like comic book conventions. They've been mostly like anime conventions. Those are like there are really many of those, and they are quite popular. And then there are like some like book conventions and comic book festivals. There's few, but not that many. And I think the Heroes Comic Con was really big deal when it got here, because it was the first time we had like this big international guest there.
It is. I mean, I think it's a really hard thing to make money off of, but at the same time, it sort of collects so many great people, and there's such a joy in like with the cosplayers and the people who are excited about the voice actors and everything. Like it's
Mm,
just, to me, it's a very joyful thing, and I do hope that like I understand that there's a sort of commercial aspect to it that could be hard to
mm.
sort of get to work. But I think it's important. I think it's important for the sort of the young creative people to have somewhere to go and hang, look
Yeah,
forward to.
definitely. And it's a big deal for people to find, especially because we are talking here a lot about like nerds who probably have well, nerd life can be really hard, especially if you're like from a smaller town or something like that. So conventions are great places where you meet those online friends, for example,
Right.
and they all are in the same stuff as you are, and they're all really intense about it. But so that's really great that there are those
I mean, we had when I was a
places.
kid, we didn't have
Mm.
Comic-Cons, but we did have computer parties. So I
Oh
would
yeah.
go to like the Gathering and all of the smaller ones. I suppose you had Assembly, which was sort of the big Finnish one. And one of the things that sort of strikes me is that like much as I enjoy sort of the coding and the demo scene aspect of those
Mm.
computer parties, it's always just the people, just meeting people that are into sort of basically the same thing that you are, and if they're not, they might be interested in whatever the strange thing you picked up, and it's just it's important to have community when you're a little nerd somewhere, whatever you're interested in. It's important to just have something. And like we have a game convention here that the kids are sort of very excited about, and
Mm.
my daughter she made she was 11 at the time, and she made like a Murder Drones cosplay. Murder Drones is a sort of absurd YouTube thing. I've seen them all because I'm a decent person, but I don't
Murder
understand
throne.
Murder Drones. I don't fucking know. But the fun thing
Oh,
is like she's going like walking around there with her cosplay, and she finds like the three other people in Norway who watches Murder
oh
Drones,
yeah,
which is just like it's a beautiful thing.
exactly.
And I will say, like, that was also a thing that I noted from in Finland. The cosplay was just so imaginative, and it was so fun. Like, it
Mm.
seemed to be a very cool scene over there. So I hope
Yeah.
you get to do more conventions, and I hope I get invited at some point. I'll do talks about whatever if you just let me have some. At some point, I went to a grocery store and I was sort of like, I just need some protein. And I bought a bunch of meat that I didn't know what it was. So I was sort of in bed in the hotel room eating mystery meat, and it was
Okay.
fucking fantastic. So I'm just saying, I just want to go to Finland, have some mystery meat, and meet the lovely people.
Okay. We would love to have you somewhere here. Like, I don't know. My first thing just pops into my mind that my town, Tampere, has like this smaller comic book festival every spring, and we've had like this year we were there having a little panel of our own with another comic book podcast, and we definitely need to have you there and join us for whatever excuse we can come up with. Like,
Whatever excuse to go to Finland.
yeah. It's lovely to hear that you enjoyed your stay here. And I'm freezing.
Because look, you just need to just give me something. I'll talk about whatever.
Yeah,
It's,
I do
it's,
notice that you're
yeah. It's a
really
nightmare.
sociable, so I can
The sociable is the
appreciate
problem.
that.
The problem is that I don't think before I speak, so I don't know what's coming out of my mouth at any point.
That is completely fine. I can tell you that normally we have like a third host here, and the first episode she was in, I ended the episode by telling her essentially the Finnish version of "fuck you," and I especially loved it because her mother listened to that episode.
That's great.
So,
what is the Finnish version of "fuck you"?
It's haista vittu.
Sure.
Haista vittu. And brilliant translation came from this at my school. This I'm not sure. It's like a guidance counselor or this type of person. She was doing this paper for exchange student about Finnish culture. So she needed to translate haista vittu. It's sniffa cunt.
But that's good though.
That's good.
Yeah, because it is a sort of like, I realize, let's talk about the English language and its limitations. There's sometimes, especially when you go far up north in Norway, we do have some excellent swear words, but when you try to translate, they're like, no, but I mean, it's like when you try to do an actual translation of what they're saying, it's so coarse, like there's so much bestiality, and there are horse cocks, and but it's great, you know. And I sometimes, when I try to sort of literally translate some of these things, you sound absolutely insane. But I do think like I think the English language, at least in the American sort of, they could do with some more interesting swear words in general.
I always remember when Conan O'Brien talks in his talk show years ago about Finland and Finnish words, and there's curse word paskan marjat, and then he translated shitberries, and so that was awesome conversation when he tries to understand the word shitberries.
So would that be like dingleberry? Like, would that be the same, or would it not?
It's closer to like bullshit. Like when someone is lying, you say paskan marjat.
Right.
Shitsberries. If you're even more literate, it's like berries of shit.
Oh yeah.
So it implies that your shit can create berries, which is really interesting.
Which I'm sure makes sense in some possible way. It's
exactly.
It's great. That's what it is.
How about if we talk a little bit comic books? So Torunn, how you end up being a comic book writer?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be a writer. That was a very sort of, I knew I wanted to write, and I kept telling myself, like, anytime I was feeling like I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. I was like, yeah, but you're supposed to be writing, and I did write a thing. I wrote a novel, and I came to a very specific scene, and I still remember the scene. And I thought, like, oh, what I want here isn't my fucking bullshit. I want one of Steve Dillon's just silent reaction panels. That's what I want. Just one perfect expression drawn by Steve Dillon. And I had the thought of like, but I could do that. I mean, maybe not with Steve, but I could write comics instead. And I sort of went down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out how to write a comic script. And I, like that night, I sort of sent out a bunch of inquiries, being like, "Who could you draw it? How does it work?" And that was it. And I sort of never looked back. So I started writing a series called Ageless, which was sort of picked up, which was in many ways sort of terrifying, because it's always interesting when your first thing gets published and is out there. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but anyway, I wrote that. I found an artist, and I did what I think writers should do, which is I paid him to write my fucking script, because it's like it's a huge commitment of time for the artist part, right? And then I sent it out to a bunch of different publishers, and Caliber said yes. And while doing those things, I went to comic conventions and I tried to sort of get acquainted with the scene. And if you want to do like comics for the Western international market, I think going to like Thought Bubble in England, or Baltimore in the US, or one of the just shows that are more like comic centered of the big shows over there. Like C2E2 is great. Like New York Comic Con and San Diego is also like they're great Comic Cons, but they're so fucking huge that you can't sort of find the people. But like Thought Bubble, you sort of know where everyone's going to be, because they're going to be in a hotel bar. So you can talk to people and you can get acquainted, and you can sort of get a feel of which of the sort of sandboxes you want to play in, which I think is important. And then people can meet you and make sure that you're not sort of like that they want to work with you, because that's also a thing. Like you need to be I'm not going to say likable, because that's not the issue, right? You just need to be, reliable. You just need to show that you're a proper person. And the good thing about the comic industry is that like they're always looking for new talent, and interesting voices, and because it's like a lot of people can afford to take a chance on something if there's something there, So what I did that for like a few years. I wrote my own book, and I wrote a web comic called Past, and I did a bunch of like smaller projects, which is very good to do, because you get to first of all, you get to finish the project, which I think is a very important and sort of underrated thing to do. Just make sure that you actually start something and then end it. And I got to work with a bunch of different artists and sort of get a feel of what they wanted, because it's that's my main job is obviously to sort of communicate something to the artist. And then at some point I met, like I was sort of doing the whole, I was going to say networking, but that's not true. I was drinking in New York, and I told some awful stories, and Jason Aaron was like, "Hey, you're a mess. You're a fun person." And he picked up some of my books, which was very nice of him. And he sent one of the books to Marvel and said, "Hey, this chick has something, and she's Norwegian, and I need a co-writer on Valkyrie. Maybe that would be something." So that was sort of my way into Marvel, which was a very nice way to do it, because I could sort of, I had Jason there in case I sort of choked. But I was also like, this is a good opportunity to show that I can do something. And Jane Foster is she's a very lovely character to write, because it's possible to do something on sort of all levels. Because she's so thoughtful and caring and all of the good stuff, but she also knows how to kick ass. So you can sort of get some more, meat on the bone, I suppose. So that it was a good way to sort of get into Marvel. And then obviously once you're there, I mean, I had actually written a thing for DC at the time, but that was never published because the editor sort of quit. Like I delivered the script on Tuesday and the editor quit on Thursday or something. So I don't think anyone ever read the script. And it was a Batman thing. And I can assure you, if you really want to get your heart broken, it's just try to be like, oh, you get to write Batman now, and then you can't write Batman anymore.
Oh my God, that sounds terrifying. Like, because I mean, Batman, that's like the top three biggest characters. Like, yeah, children dream of writing that.
Yep. And it's always like people go, when I say I write comics, they're like Batman? I'm like, yeah, almost like Batman. Almost. So I did write it. Never saw the light of day.
Then you just have to like play it confidence and say it like, no, but you have to see that Thor is so much cooler. He has way bigger hammer than Batman has.
So he would absolutely beat Batman. I'm almost certain. No, it's a fascinating thing, and the DC fans and the Marvel fans are quite different. And it's a sort of fascinating difference because, like in Marvel, you know what a good ending of an issue is. Like it's and it could be like a huge visual or like the introduction of a character. It could be just like Thanos picking up something and you'll be like, oh my God. But it's also dependent on the fact that you already know who Thanos is for that to make sense. But because it's Marvel, you sort of assume that you know that's gonna but in DC, like the pacing is different and the like everything feels a little more I wouldn't say sort of intellectual, but there is a certain, you can have more panel count, higher panel count. There's a sort of subtle differences that I'm sort of trying to figure out as I go along. Obviously you have to, whoever you're writing for, you have to first think about artists and what they can handle. But generally when working for DC, the artists they've sort of given me has been more comfortable with that sort of storytelling than what I've done at Marvel, which is, I don't know, it's an interesting thing, but it's and it's fascinating to see the differences in the fandoms and everything. But it's sort of the through line is that they care deeply about the characters, and I sort of just trying to make sure that I do them justice, and that like if you fell in love with Cletus Cassidy at some point, you should love my version of Cletus Cassidy.
Absolutely brilliant. I just love it.
Oh, did you enjoy my murderous psychopath? Because it's probably one of the favorite things I've ever written. Like me and Cletus are just like same contempt for the world. It's just great.
Yeah, and there's the new Spider-Girl comic. I just read a couple of numbers that, and I'm thinking how you end up writing Spider-Girl or some specific comics to Marvel, or did they tell you here's this or this character, would you like to do it, or do you pitch the idea yourself?
Well, that's usually how it happens, that editors sit around and they have an idea for a book, and editors are usually quite involved in sort of their vision of what they're, and like a good editor will be able to put together like a really great creative team and sort of through them get their vision across, you know, and most of the time there will be sort of a conversation between the editor and the potential creators involved, and they're sort of like figure out if they feel like they're all on the same page. So I don't think I know that Marvel knew that I really wanted to write like Punisher, but I'm not sure how much of that was sort of factored into the fact that they offered me the book. So every time I've gotten anything, it's been people sort of approaching me and going, hey, what about do you have any thoughts about, you know, this thing? And then I have some thoughts, send them over, and if they sort of align with what the editor is looking for, we can sort of work from there. But it's a great collaboration. like with Catwoman, Ariana, who is like she's one of the best editors I've ever worked with. We had a conversation, and she had a lot of thoughts about how she wanted to, like what she wanted to see from Catwoman, and I think her instincts were so right, like so on the money. And that sort of guided my approach to where we went. And that sort of, it feels good when you have a creative, like your little group of people. You really need to sort of love whatever you're doing, and there is always going to be a bunch of like someone's not going to like whatever you're doing. That's always
Of
going
course
to be the
not.
case. But you just need to make sure that like there are some people who feel like this is going to be their favorite whatever, and not to be like all 2025, but I feel like that's one of the problems with the big movies these days, that they try to please sort of everyone, and you don't get that like one vision to come across. So you have a bunch of movies that are perfectly fine, but they're not anyone's favorite movie, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think it's always more interesting when you have creators who make something that is going to be someone's going to hate it, but like there's going to be someone's like, this is my favorite thing.
Exactly. That is really well said. I want to ask more about the collaboration. You said that the editor usually first ask you about the character, and then like they have some ideas, the editors. When we talk about their ideas, are there like how specific like for example, do they say that they want to see Catwoman beat this character or go through this character, or is it more like they want to see Catwoman go through certain emotions, or how specific are we talking about?
Well, it depends on sort of how connected it is to the greater universe at play. So like with Catwoman specifically, one of the things that DC wanted to do was to bring Selina out of Gotham for a bit and just have her do something else without necessarily having a bunch of Gotham characters in the mix. And there can be sort of several different reasons for why they needed that to happen, but that was sort of the thing that I was given as a like, what do you think about this sort of thing? But sometimes it could be like, if you want to do, like, if you're working towards a big event in the Marvel universe, you might do like you do whatever you want, but could we do it sort of like, could we at some point hit this beat, or could we at some point get to Mud Report or whatever, to just like connect the two things, which is frankly is a very fun sort of challenge, because it's having like, if you're giving sort of just a piece of paper going like, do whatever you want, it's always a bit harder than if you go like, could you just tweak it in that direction. And I think like these are, everyone who's working at the companies that I'm talking about here are seasoned professionals, and they know that like talent is going to work better if they get a little direction.
Exactly.
So and I've done like with the Carnage thing, I could do pretty much whatever I wanted, but we started with Carnage having sort of limited, like, was he a god? He was sort of, he had no kryptonite, if you know what I mean? So and like, is he a god? That was sort of the premise that it sort of began on. And then we had to figure out, because you can't have just a god character, because that's sort of, it's sort of boring, because you can't really, there must be a weakness somewhere, right?
Of course.
So that was the starting point, and then we could do pretty much whatever we wanted, but we also knew what was coming up in Venom War in like a year and a half. Like we knew sort of what was going to happen, so it was sort of trying to get it to work. And I was also writing Venom at the time. So we knew we wanted to do like at least one issue where you could see, like, they would meet and we could see both sort of the characters in both arcs, sort of from each character.
Like a crossover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was superbly fun to do.
Yeah, I bet. How much limitations do you have with taking other characters from, for example, in Marvel Universe? Are you I assume that you have to like ask your editor if some character is free to use, or how are they? Have
Well, I
you
mean,
found that? Or what do you think about that? How has it been for you?
well, for the most part, like they are there to try to make it happen, which is
Mm.
fucking great, you know. And the editors that I worked with, they do really try to just like, if we can't, like, try to figure out a way to get the character in there if that's what we really want to.
Mm.
But there's always a little, like, sometimes people will have an idea of someone, like in Spider-Girl. Not that I'm gonna spoil it, but there will be some X-Men appearing at some point.
Ooh, okay.
And that's always like the X-Men are, they're always out there doing some nonsense, right? And
Yeah,
there's always
exactly.
some, so you know, the and the fandom is they're attentive, and they sort of they keep track on everyone, so you have to make sure that it sort of lines up. And
Mm.
so we knew that we wanted, like, we asked for these characters, and then we could get these characters, and that's
Okay.
fine, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's usually what happens, is like we sort of we try to make it work, or we have some substitutes.
Yeah, of course.
But for the most of the time, that they just sort of like, oh, well, we're gonna figure this out. And we do sometimes, from time to time, there will be like a little note somewhere being like, this happened before the events of
Yeah.
just
Those
um
are always
yeah.
fun
Yeah.
way to remind readers of the continuity if they are, because some fans are really obsessed with it. Personally, I'm not.
Well,
I think it's more like a nice spice rather than the main course. But of course, people have different priorities, and that's fine.
oh, it just sometimes, especially with like Venom, there are a few great sort of Venom podcasts who really try to pay attention
Oh,
and to get
okay.
everything to work and everything. I find, I've listened to a few of them and thinking like, it's interesting to me how because if you go by like Eddie Brock's life, it's ridiculous. Like
Yeah,
at no point has this man known peace. Like it's
exactly.
been like non-stop misery from, and I don't know, like it's not gonna all make sense. Just that's just how
Exactly.
it is. But then again, I do enjoy very much that they're so passionate about these characters, and I don't know. I feel like it's the fandoms are there's just such a joyful, lovely thing, and
Yeah.
my goal is always to just make sure that, or at least I hope that if I'm tackling your favorite character, that you will recognize some of them in my version.
Of course.
And I do try to have sort of, I have great respect for the characters, whoever I'm working with, you know.
Yeah, I think that is a really good attitude towards it. Like, I think it's completely fair to do it your own way, but to have that core there, because otherwise there is a danger that you start to imitate someone else's writing too much.
Oh yeah.
And especially considering some of these characters are from the 60s, and like and there have been so many writers, so it can't be completely how do you say johdonmukainen, can't be completely like in
No, I mean, and
there
like,
have to be some like
yeah,
differences between how this one wrote it or this one.
that obviously, like I wrote Red Sonja for a good while
Mm,
there, and that's a great example of a character that, like, the backstory has been changed around, and there's
yeah,
been a lot of different, and you have people sort of arguing about what's the sort of the correct version or whatever, but it doesn't change the sort of the core of the character, whatever you do.
exactly.
Obviously, except like there's the one point in Red Sonja where like she can't like fuck you unless you've beaten her in battle or something like
Oh,
that, which they're a very specific kind of person who's like, that's the most important part of the character, and I respect it.
okay.
You go with God. You
Well, yeah, we have all our
in
own
your dreams you
priorities, and
get
if that's
to,
what,
yep.
yeah,
But I think, like, in general, I think the most important part is just not to sort of mock the character.
Yeah.
Even if you think they're a little silly, you have to buy the premise, and you have to buy the backstory, and even if you think it's a little stupid, you have to just be like, well, like, don't use them if you truly don't like the thing that made them, and I realized that, but like, I've always been quite a fan of the Sentry. I think he's a good character, and I like the Sentry. But I realized when we had him in the King in Black Valkyries. We had, like, the Valkyries took his soul to what was going to be like his afterlife. And there were a bunch of people sort of mocking the Sentry, and I don't think they understand that that's, like, there are a lot of people who has, like, the Sentry is their favorite character of all time.
Yeah.
And he's still one of the characters that I get a lot of questions from people still. And this is like 6 years ago,
Okay.
something. I still have a bunch of people like ask if there's a way to get him back from the afterlife, because we sort of put him away. So can we bring him back somehow? Which is someone else's problem, and I'm sure we
Yeah.
can somehow.
But
But
it's interesting that they actually do ask you that, like,
yeah, but it's
Uh,
but like
but
but that's the thing,
it's a
like,
good example of their passion towards the character, which is lovely. Absolutely. I love that how any character can be someone's favorite. And I'm sorry,
yeah.
I continue.
No, but that's the point, right? Like, and
Yeah.
it is like I used Paper Doll in the latest issue of Spider-Girl,
Yeah.
and I got a bunch of messages from people being like, "Oh, it's my favorite character!" And like, Paper Doll? It's really, and the thing is, but I also remember Paper Doll from like the 90s or wherever, and so she did stick around somehow. But I just think it's so fun when people have like this little, they have their favorites, and I respect
Yeah,
it deeply.
exactly. Yeah, and I love that too, because I'm really like interested always about the obscure characters, and it's especially like heartwarming when you notice that someone does bring back something that they maybe just heard of and found that, like, this character is so weird, I want to play with that, or if they like you said, have read about them in their own childhood and they want to do something, that is always exciting.
And
So yeah.
that was very funny when I read that Spider-Girl wears Paper Doll is, and I was just read Dan Slott comic Brand New Day, where he introduced the Paper Doll. So I was like, oh, okay,
Oh,
okay.
that's cool.
And now I see her again, and I was okay, but was she in something else between these 15, 20 years? I can't remember anymore.
Well, that's a fun thing. Like, I was trying to figure out sort of when was the last time we saw Paper Doll, and we had we were several people trying to sort of go through everything and see, like, is there some reference in some obscure comic that we missed? But we think we got it, and I find it fascinating that she's been in so few issues and she's still sort of stuck with so many people. But I love that. That's sort of I think it's because you guys have Donald Duck over in
Yeah,
Finland
it's
too,
big
right?
here.
Yeah, and there's the one issue with the square, the world of it, everything is square, and you have
Oh
the
yeah.
eggs, the little square eggs.
Yeah.
And I just find it so funny how people could be like, "Oh, Donald Duck, that was the thing. Oh, do you remember the square eggs?" And everyone's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
the little cubey eggs, not square eggs."
Yeah.
Jesus.
I haven't thought about that in such a long time, but it's such an iconic story. When I was kid, they published like a cookbook that was Donald Duck themed, where a Finnish chef had, uh, I think he came up with the recipes based on Donald Duck, and there was a recipe for square-shaped omelette, which
Yeah.
of course
That is
required like
fucking
a special
excellent.
made pan, but that was like so lovely that it really is an iconic story, and it goes to show how, like, how these small weird
Yeah.
details, how people love them.
It's just that sort of little spark of the imagination that makes people
Exactly.
go like, yeah, I like this, or I find something in this. And it's always fun when, because I try to do things that excite me somehow. Whatever I'm
Mm,
writing, I try to put in like something that I will be like, this is
yeah.
like candy. And my favorite thing is when other people like the same thing as me,
Yeah.
which doesn't necessarily happen every time because I always try to do all the other stuff
Of
too, you
course.
know. They're like the small moments in between that I know that like those are the things that make the book sort of worth it for me. When other
Mm,
people like them, best feeling in the world.
I bet it is. Uh, Going back to the Spider-Girl, I'm curious because I also like read the first issue, really enjoyed it. Seems really interesting. I excited to read more, but my understanding is that Spider-Girl is a spin-off of Spider-Boy, who's a spin-off of Spider-Man, and I'm really curious about how your editor comes to you and pitches this kind of like spin-off of a spin-off, and
Yeah.
do they give you like an are you required to read the other series, or do they more give you like information,
Well, I mean,
or what is your method in that
well,
way?
in that specific, I always go back and read whatever I
Yeah.
can, and not not in this case, but I have had other times where I've sort of been like, oh, I can't get through everything because it's just so
Too much.
either
Yeah.
it's not my thing or it's just like I get a sense of what we're trying to do. But like in this case, I read everything, and one of the things that is fascinating about the spider sort of the Spidey office in general is that it feels a little different from the rest of the Marvel universe.
Okay.
There is a like I always try to make things that I know that sounds ridiculous after writing Carnage, but there's always a sort of I try to approach it in a realistic manner. Like I always try to sort of have some sort of oh maybe not like Carnage at some point wears a dude as a sort of suit, like a
Yeah.
meat suit, while keeping him alive. And the editor at some point went, "How does that work, Torunn?" I'm like, "I don't know, symbiote, whatever the fuck,
Yeah.
shit, like it's gonna be fine." But anyway, like, but in the Spidey universe, you have a sort of different villain gallery that you can play with, and there is a different sort of pacing and a different way of sort of viewing the action, which I don't think it necessarily is a huge difference for the reader, but I had to sort of get into it. So it was very helpful to read through all of Dan's sort of the Spider Boys and everything because it seems to me like I would like more sort of quiet periods in between. I would like more moments of like family matters or whatever. But it
Oh
is a
yeah.
sort of very sort of like we go hard. And like Spider Girl, she's 10,
Yeah.
which is one of the things that like I was told like, oh, so there's this 10-year-old who has already been a villain and now she has these powers and she wants to be a hero. And she went to Madripoor with Bullseye, and I'm like, how did she bring her passport? Like, how did that work? And they're like, what do you care? Like, no, but you can't just take a 10-year-old and fuck off. Like, how would you even? And they're like, well, don't worry about it. So there was a sort of I sort of had to get into the fact that first of all, this is not necessarily meant for 40-year-old. It's sort of it's meant for kids who are trying to get into comics. And I sometimes I had to sort of dumb things down. Oh no, that's not true. Not dumb things down. I had to take the cursing out of it.
Of course.
And I tried to I got away with doing a lot of because she does curse a lot, but I just had to make up a bunch of curse words that I thought of felt like fluck. You understand that
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Mm,
And then there are some sort of moments where we had to sort of take this thing out a little bit because it would be too awful. So sort of have to get into the idea of sort of like we're not writing a kid's book. We're just writing a book that if a kid picked it up and read it, they wouldn't be traumatized. That's what we're
exactly.
generally going for. And I'm sort of I have kids, but they are like my just the closest to a 10-year-old I have, when she was 10, she was watching Rick and Morty. That was her sort of favorite thing, and she was making, at some point she made an incest porn joke that was so funny. It was so funny that you couldn't really help but sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't, that's not the version of, told her not to do it at school, and then you can't really, you have to write to make sure that like you don't get, moms of freedom or whatever the fuck on your back.
That is you can't make Spider-Girl tell that same joke, even though it is reality in
Really
some
funny.
places. And that is
I want to ask this: when you write a Spider-Girl or whatever Spider character, is there something you need to know about other Spider titles, or is there like from now the Amazing Spider-Man where Peter is working at Rand Corporation and you put it in your comics? Do you know these before or just in when you're writing?
Well, we try to make it sort of feel like this is the same city and this is happening at the same time, and obviously we are sort of the Manhattan is blowing up a lot. I don't know. It is what it is. But we do try to make sure it feels like it is in the same universe, and like Peter shows up at some point in our run, which isn't like it's not like a huge spoiler. And we try to make sure that everything sort of fits together. And I think that like when you're dealing with the spiders, which there are a bunch, right? Like there are a bunch of different, and people get into the Spider-Verse from different medias, and from like whoever they saw the first is their Spider-Man. And that's not necessarily the Spider-Man that we're playing with, but they have a certain, so you have to sort of establish who your spider is and how they differ from the other spiders, and give them some personality and something that will stand out, but still be a sort of feel like a Spider-Man comic or a Spidey comic, which has been sort of an interesting challenge for me, just because it's like I tend to go a little more mythic and a little darker and a little more sort of gruesome, but here it is okay to just be like we went in for the joke and we got the joke, and that's that's fine. Which is in some ways sort of delightful. And also like we're trying to because Maka, who is Spider-Girl right now, she's from Hawaii, and we're trying to sort of make sure, but we have like consultants making sure that we get the backstory sort of correct. And I do my research, but I still sort of check that I don't get anything like madly wrong, which is always sort of, and I'm sure you see this too, like when people portray Norwegian characters, they're always called like Magnus, and they're all like it's always the same thing, and they always get some sort of tiny bits wrong, and you think like if you just run it by like one single Norwegian, they would be able to tell you that just sounds idiotic, but okay. And I just wanted to make sure that whatever we're doing, I don't want the Hawaiians to be like, fuck. We couldn't even Google it. We did Google and we did check, and we have a team of lovely Hawaiians doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, that is really nice to hear, because I know that for some people it's really important. For me, like personally, if I see a Finnish character somewhere, I usually just find it hilarious if it's wrong, because I don't care, but I am a Finnish man living in Finland. I'm surrounded by real Finns all the time. But for example, maybe for a Finnish boy living in the United States, it's completely different experience. So it's really important that people, like you said, use consultants and talk to the actual people they are trying to portray in the as respectful manner as possible, because it really does affect how people view themselves. Like,
Oh yeah, and I think it's just I know that it's always going to be hard for Marvel to find, or for anyone to be like I don't want to be just write female characters, right?
yeah, of course not.
But it is also like if you're going to have a Spider-Girl, you would want her to be written by a woman, preferably.
Yeah.
And if it had been like a woman from Hawaii, it would probably have been even better. But they also need to do, like, this is an ongoing series with really sort of the deadlines are hard and fast, and we
Yeah.
need to be able to change things around really sort of not drastically, but we need to be able to do that, right? So they need to know that they need to have some experience with the person that they're working with, is what I'm saying. To just know that they can handle it. So they landed on me because I'm a woman, and I sort of, I like a quirky girl. Like that's a
Yeah.
cool thing, and I do think that we have generally a sort of lack of just cool, not necessarily like strong female characters, because we have a bunch of really strong female characters physically and everything.
Yeah.
But it would be fun to have some, some breadth and personality and everything, those
Yeah.
things.
Something I want to go back to is you talked about how Spider-Man comics have that certain type of pacing and how action is set up and all that. I'm curious, like, are there like literal mandates on like you need to have this much fighting in a book or this much action or something like that? Or does it come more naturally as you're starting to write the story?
Well, I think it's one of those things that you know it is expected. Like in a
Yeah.
Spider comic, there will be some fighting, and that's just how it is. And one of the things that sort of, like with Catwoman, we could technically possibly have issues without really any action, as long as it was sort of emotionally really tasty, if you know what I mean. And that's a new thing for me, because usually I'm like I need to make sure I hit some beats here and there.
Yeah.
But with Spider-Girl, it was never really like we needed some action. We knew there would need to be some action, even if that is just her swinging through New York. We needed the huge, lovely pages.
Oh yeah.
And it's the same thing with like Carnage and Venom. Like, even if I want things to feel emotionally sort of there, and I want to hit a bunch of different beats, we do need the symbiote sort of clashing into something, and
Yeah.
blood and gore, all over the place. But not intestine. That's what we learned from Carnage, because we could do pretty much anything, but we had one flying intestine, and they're like, no, that's
Oh, okay.
that's one intestine too far. So that's the only thing we had to remove in the art. Was like one, I don't know. But that was like, also with Carnage, there is a sort of, you want him to be, you need there to be action, and it could be just awfulness on the page, but if you don't hit the sort of psychological terror, the underlying psychological terror, it doesn't really work. So it's just trying to make sure that the visuals will be grand and gruesome. Or in Spider-Girls, it just needs to be, grand and cool.
Yeah.
While it's like in Catwoman, you can get away with a little less of that.
Yeah.
So it takes me, like, a Catwoman script takes me, I don't know, 9 times as long as other scripts, because it's so much. Like, at some point I had her in Stockholm, and Selena took a ferry from Germany to Sweden, and then she made her way to Stockholm. And I was checking the ferry times and the bus times. I was figuring out how. And at some point, I'm like, this is not necessary. Like,
Yeah,
just let
exactly.
it go.
I mean, there is that one fan who will check
I hope
and
so.
then
I
they will
fucking hope
update
so.
the wiki if there is any like, and they will do the.
Just so you know, if you got
they
it
want
on
to go
that
the same
ferry,
route as well, and
yeah, the sun would not be there on the
yeah,
sky if they got in on that ferry
yeah,
in,
yeah,
October.
yeah.
It's
And
yeah,
my personal advice is that we don't need to. You don't need to write for that fan specifically,
nobody sort
unless
of
you're really into the boat schedules. Then,
well,
of course, if you're into it.
it is a beautiful way to procrastinate because it feels like work,
Oh
or
yeah.
like, oh, you need, of course, which ferry you should like, and it is a sort of, if you know that you need to I knew that she had to get to Stockholm, and I knew that she needed to do that in a way that she would avoid like airports, and
Of course.
I was just trying to figure out different ways to do it, and there is a certain sort of lovely just procrastinating. We're just sort of staying with the story without actually writing anything, which is always nice. But it does feel at some point when you look back at the day and be like, what did I do today? Very little, if we're
Yeah.
honest, if we're absolutely honest. But I did get some nice references of like the ferry port in Stockholm, Sweden, which I don't even remember the name of but it is real. And the bus
Yeah.
does go to Stockholm.
That's great. Something came to mind as you talked about like how it takes longer to write Catwoman because it might have less action. Like, how specifically do you write like something like an action scene? How does it? Because I've never like written a comic book, so I don't know the specific. Like, how detailed are you, and how much do you let like the artists themselves like go nuts?
Well, it depends on the artist and what they like to do. What I like to make sure of is that what I'm asking for can be done. You know what I mean? Because it is sort of tempting to just be so there's always a little thumbnail like drawn out somewhere, but I sort of like this, it can be done. And I'm also like I'm a painter and I am a
Yeah.
visual artist. I just can't do comic art because it's just so time consuming and it's so hard.
Have you tried?
Yeah, well, I mean, not seriously.
Okay, yeah.
I just know, like, after the very few attempts I've had of trying to simplify my style down to something that would be doable, I realized that I'm just not good enough to, because I do like paintings that take me 4 to 5 hours to sort of wank away at one face, and I sort of want to get it completely there. But you can't do that if you're trying to draw comics.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you do a comic script, what you usually do is you write like panel 1, or page 1, panel 1, and then you write whatever you want the artist to draw, right? And what I usually do is that I'm one of the more like descriptive writers. I know a lot of people go like, if you have like 1 page in Word should be it shouldn't exceed 1 page, like that's a rule. I exceed 1 page almost always.
Okay.
So like a 22-page script will be 60 pages when I send it over to the editors. But I also try to make sure that the artist knows that if they see a better way to solve the problem, they should absolutely feel free to do so. And most of the time they do, and it's always better than whatever I had in mind. But I just try to make sure that I give all the information that I have in my head, and I try to make sure that like if there is if you have a scene set in an office on page 4, and we go back to that scene or that office on page 15, and there's supposed to be a knife on the table, that knife is mentioned on page 4. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just to make
exactly.
sure that like, and as I give a bunch of information, and I hope it's not awful. And generally the people like the most of the feedback I've gotten from artists is that they enjoy the scripts. Well, I hope so. Maybe they're lying. Maybe I should. Maybe this is the time for a meltdown. Maybe.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. But I just feel like I want to make sure that I've done my job, and then
No, that sounds
yeah.
absolutely like correct. Like, it is important to the knife example was really good. Like, it reminds me of like because I watch a lot of movies, and whenever I watch a movie or a TV show, and no, I notice that there's a window open in a room, and people are arguing. I always get so mad if nobody gets thrown out of the window. Because why was it open if you're not gonna throw anybody out?
Sheiko's open window. Well, I mean that's a good thing, but then again, you do want it to be like at some point in Catwoman, I had she used the oil from an oil lamp to sort of smash over a bunch of cash, so it flames and everything, you know, fire. And I needed to make sure earlier on that it would be natural for her to have access to an oil lamp, you know, because those aren't necessarily everywhere.
Exactly.
So it is one of those, like, if you know you're going to need something, you need to make sure that it feels natural. So it like I want it to be a bit of a surprise. Like and I would like if I throw someone out the window, I would preferably like I wouldn't like it to be a surprise. No. So maybe I would have like a bunch of open windows just to make sure that like I don't know. But it is a sort of there is a just trying to make sure that it feels correct and that you don't do the thing where it's just like, oh, how are we going to solve this? Or we're going to have like suddenly she has something.
Exactly. There's a balance of like setting it up but not making it too obvious so that the reader will be thinking about the whole time, why was there an oil lamp? Oh, that's why.
Yeah. Well, I will say that I take a certain pleasure in, you know, when you watch a movie and there's a kid and the kid is saying something, that kid is going to die. Let's face it. Like that's just going to happen. So I do take a certain pleasure in introducing something that obvious and then not doing quite what we were supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But still giving some sort of payoff for introducing whatever. But it's always a balance, and I do think that there is something to like I think the reader would like to be a little bit it's always delightful to sort of not see a twist coming, but it is also a pretty nice feeling to be like, oh, I did see, I was clever enough to pick up on all the things, and I think I have a theory. So there's a sort of balance you have to play with.
That reminds me of how I once I don't know where I heard or read it, but like the movie Die Hard is based on exactly the idea that viewer always knows more than the characters. He always knows. It's always like, I know what's going. Oh, you're gonna get it. So there is a satisfaction to that too. And of course, like we all like surprises, but both can be really nice, fun, and I think changing it time to time probably keeps it reader on the toes as well.
Yeah, and it's a very effective sort of narrative device to give the reader some information that the character doesn't have. But you have to sort of be careful to not only rely on that too. Like as with everything, when you comes to writing, it is a sort of subtle. You don't want anyone. You want to avoid sort of exposition at any point, right? So you want to hand over all the information you need the reader to have as smoothly as possible. And I think sometimes it's better to go in a little ridiculous route than to do the obvious one. Then you know what do you call it, like the hey Bob, as you know, Bob. Bob, which is always the present.
That can be really annoying sometimes. Sometimes you of course need it because you don't have time to actually.
Sometimes you need like the TV on and a newsreader who is conveniently explaining the problem at hand. But even like the newsreader that's at least her job. Like the moment you go, as you know, or you are my wife, you should. Like it's always like it always trips me off.
And it does sound weird. Yeah.
it is a sort of, that's one of the things that I think, like I've done a bunch of like storytelling workshops with different students, and it is, once you get into like, and you see all the little tricks that people do, like I think the most famous one is Save the Cat, which is a screenwriting book, right? Which the premise is obviously that if you get the hero of the story to save a cat or do something really nice at the very beginning, you're going to root for him or her, you know? And once you know that and you start seeing all the cats being saved, it's a fascinating thing. So you just, and you have to make sure that even those people enjoy whatever you're doing. It's a great job. It's a great job if you want to be, you know, torture yourself mentally.
Yeah, exactly. But also, like, I think it can be really enjoyable to notice those things sometimes. And there was recently a movie that actually, like, lampshaded to save the cat. There was a literally character who saved a cat, and after that, someone literally said, "He saved the cat."
Perfect, beautiful.
Perfect.
I assume that's some sort of, they're just trying to. That's a reference that we're supposed to giggle of because it's blatant and beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. That's like I can really enjoy that. This reminds me, like, are you when it comes to writing, have you studied or are you self-taught or?
I'm very much self-taught. I have, my background is like computers, web services, graphic design, sort of like very technical, nerdy nonsense. And even that was like, because I did the whole computer parties and that was my community, I didn't really find, because I'm old, like I didn't find any good sort of, there wasn't anything interesting to study. So I just started working, which is what I've been doing since I was like 17 or something. And I rely a lot on the fact that if I get really interested in something, I'm just going to devour everything on the subject. So I have all the books and I have all the everything, and I try to make sure to have a healthy interest in sort of the craft of writing and the craft of comic books, because obviously you have a different sort of tool set in comic books than you have in movies or whatever. And being aware of the tools available is a great thing, but it's not necessarily something that you can get by, like, you have to sort of stumble upon someone who can teach you that. And there are sort of like in America, I think you have like the Kubert Academy, and there are some places where you can go and sort of study comic books. But in general, it's just like you have to think when you're doing creative writing studies in general, you're sort of at the mercy of whoever is teaching you. And
of course,
if they sort of go to sleep wanking off to the Russian greats, that's sort of what you have to deal with or whatever.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I also like as a hobby I do in this podcast, but also otherwise I do like movie criticism and that. And sometimes I notice these people who've clearly like gone to a one writing course and they've learned like few of those like rules, let's call them, and they've like taken them to so deep in their heart that they don't realize that they are more like advices or guidances, and it's just interesting. So I was curious because you really seem to have a interesting and smart way of thinking.
Well, I mean, it is I think generally when you like I honestly think we're into an era of filmmaking, especially where the notes are too, like, things are being noted to death. And I think there is something maybe less polished, but also more interesting about seeing someone's sort of clear vision of this is what they want to do. So I hope we're sort of getting into a new era of, we seem to be, whether we want to or not, because everything is sort of falling apart. But that is one of the things that I really enjoy about comics, that you there are less people involved, and if you have all of those sort of broadly on the same page, you can make something really special.
Mm.
And you can, most of the time you can get people to sort of go for it and just see if it works, which is a sort of delightful thing. And I suppose like when you have a movie with many millions of dollars of a budget, you have to try to make sure that everyone's going to enjoy it. But it's just like, have you met everybody? They fucking suck. Like, it's just the general public, they're all insane.
Exactly.
You can't make all of them happy.
Yeah, that is definitely, I assume that like comic book must be like way less restrictive, even if we are talking about these like Marvel and DC, these huge companies. We of course already a little bit talked about how was it before we were recording, we were talking about the nudity, how
that might be in while recording. I don't even remember.
yeah.
But yeah, it is a sort of like, but with America, the nudity is like one thing, but the other thing is just like how much are you going to explain to the audience? Like, how much can you trust that they're going to pay attention? How, like, because there is a reason, like, if you watch Arrested Development or like, there are certain things that when you rewatch them for the 900th times, you'll be like, oh, that I didn't get that joke before now. Like, there is a certain sort of delightful thing in knowing there will always, no one's going to sort of point out every funny bit. Exactly. Or like if you watch Weep, there's going to be things that you might not get, but it's just going to be there, and if you get it, it's going to be great. And then you have there is a certain, you can tell how a lot of people be like, well, I know this is the point, but if they don't get the point, let's add a caption here and the caption here to just sort of push the point through. And sometimes it feels a little less earned, you know what I mean? So there's something to just sort of the level of which you can trust the audience to go with something and remember the characters and then try to deliver something that feels, special.
Yeah, that is a good point. Sorry, I just got thinking, because I think it does like depend on situations, because sometimes I do think there are situations where you do have to like say your message straight up in a way of like I think Spike Lee was once asked like your movies are very direct, and he answered that yeah, we don't pussyfoot around, which is I think completely fair. If you have like an actual really important message, then you do need to shout it out so that even the people in the back row get it.
But I mean, it is a sort of funny thing, like, Judge Dredd in the UK, which is sort of like they will get weekly letters from people being like, get your politics out of my comics. It's like, it's Judge Dredd. What? Did you not get it? Like, I've been reading it since 87.
Have you?
And you just started putting politics in there. I don't know, but I find that sort of delightful. I've had people who've read my Punisher stories, and they have a very different idea what the Punisher, my Punisher stories meant. And I don't necessarily fuck around if they have a specific idea and they love that thing that they think that I did. By all means, go with God and enjoy that. And there is a certain, sometimes the poetry of something will just die if you add in a little and
no, that's completely fair. It depends always on the work. That is a really interesting thing that because of course all art is like subjective in the end. How do you as a writer deal with those situations where someone has a completely different interpretation of what you've done? Like, does it bother you, or can you like enjoy the fact that someone found something that you didn't actually meant to put in there?
I didn't think about it. I most of the time I just sort of enjoy it. It depends on what a lot of people will assume things about me based on the comics, which I find fascinating. So as long as it's just about the comics, then that's that's great most of the time. Unless they're yelling at me for like they didn't get something and now they didn't get something else and they think I made a mistake. But I will say that there is a fascinating thing when you have people who assume things about me because I wrote something, or if I had like a villain say something and they're like, "Hey, you didn't." Blah, blah. It's always fascinating when you have to go like, well, these are fictional characters and it is my job to make you feel things. So maybe sometimes they will say things that you don't agree with, that I don't agree with.
Exactly.
Or you have like, I had a dude once who came up to me at a signing and he just went, "Just so you know, like when you need to step on someone's balls, mine are at your disposal." And I was like, "Oh, that's where did you get that?" I don't know where he got it, but it was probably in some books that I don't know. Maybe that was in the Warhammer book that I sort of I missed.
Or he was just a perverted weirdo who needs to learn some boundaries.
At some point after reading my books, he went, "That's what Torunn wants to do. Just want to step on men's balls."
Yeah.
I don't know. And I didn't want to
Maybe
yell
I have
at
to
him.
go and read Spider-Girl again and then notice that every first panel of the words comes. Like, there's some secret code and
just hand me your balls.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's not in Spider-Girl. It's just it's in something else, something older, something not less for kids and more for the grown-ups. I don't know, but it is that's always a fascinating thing, and I never know quite how to handle it because I don't want to, like, if they get something out of thinking that I believe or do whatever, that's up to them. But I do generally try to. I think I had a conversation with this is a great name drop. Like Garth Ennis is one of my good friends, and he's certain sort of at some point, I'm not sure if he made a conscious choice or if it just came naturally to him, but he didn't want to walk sort of in front of his work. And we had that conversation a few times where it's just like you can either create a character around you and be like, people love you, therefore they should read your work, or you can stay behind your work and just be like, here's the work, see what you get from it. And obviously people will have very specific ideas about who you are based off your work, and most of the time it'll be wrong. But I do find that I'm a lot more comfortable with the idea of being behind the work than sort of turning into some sort of Norwegian forest queen lady who would like, to step on all your balls. I don't know. So, and I do see it from time to time, when especially like in these days where you need to be on social media and you have to sort of give something of yourself to reach people. There is a certain temptation in turning yourself into a sort of character.
Of course.
And it has worked very well for some people, trying to name people who have not sort of been, like say Warren Ellis, which is one of those characters that's been like, people seem to have an opinion about him, whether they read the work or not, or like other of the sort of like, or Grant Morrison for that sake, which is sort of like he's very much a person, and then you get the sort of disciples of his work, which I find is very interesting. But then again, it does come with a sort of it's easy to fall if you sort of you climbed up the tower. I don't know. It's easy to fall down.
Definitely.
Okay, so how about if we talk a little bit villains? So how you get up some villains that you want to show up in your comic, say like Spider-Girl, how you get the idea of use something like in the first issue there's Vermin, or the third issue there's the paper doll. So where you get the idea of use those characters?
Well, it is like with Spider-Girl, there is a certain like we want relatively short arcs. So like 1 issue, 2 issues. We wanted to sort of be able to resolve it pretty quickly. And we can in Spider-Girl, because it's a Spidey comic, we can go a little more ridiculous, if that makes sense, in the best possible way, just to be clear. But like Vermin, who is a character with a bunch of lore, but is in like, it's a huge big rat. Technically there's a bunch of huge big rats, but like for the argument's sake, we're just going to go with it's a huge rat with rat instincts and rat's capabilities. And in that comic, the first issue, what we needed to do was sort of establish that someone was interested in Spider-Girl's very specific powers. And we wanted to have someone that could be sort of, we could let loose huge destructive powers, but then not necessarily be like a huge sort of psychological thing for her to figure out. So one of the things like with Paper Doll, I wanted to sort of the backstory and everything to work, and we had a whole conversation about like who is Paper Doll today, and we sort of landed on like she would be an influencer kind of type, and that's a sort of it's a fun thing to give the villains a certain a story that makes sense, and a story that you can look at and be like, yeah, I can see that feels, it could be me, like if I just step wrong. You want them to be as human as possible, except for when you just need the destructive power that, say, a vermin can give you, right? So with Spider-Girl, I had a bunch of different villains that I was interested in just because I remembered them, because they had something, right? And then I just started to sort of design the first 5 issues and try to figure out like what would make sense, and how would the pacing work for like the first trade. And I don't know, that's how we landed on but it's like in Spider-Girl, the villains can be a little less sort of, usually what I like is when you have a villain that you can absolutely see yourself in, you know, like you want someone where you go like, yeah, I understand how they ended up there trying to kill those people. I like that. I think that's sort of the best possible thing, and I like it when you get to a point where sort of the hero and the villain are sort of at the same level, like they have more in common with each other than the rest of the world. And I think that's one of the most sort of common, like if I read a lot of military history and a lot of like soldier memoirs and everything, and that's one of the sort of the common things that you have in people in any possible way, that like they're fighting, they will have a moment where like my brothers are over there and the rest of the world is just, they're just, no, they don't understand what it's like. So usually when we do, like when I look at a villain, like in general, that's always going to be my goal, is to try to find a sort of someone who is as human and understandable as possible, just with a sort of crooked way to get there. But in Spider-Girl, it's just like you want the fun, you want the tiny little punch of ridiculousness that you can get away with, without over explaining how whatever happened. You just want something. And we have in Spider-Girl, there is a sort of subplot with Hijack, who's one of the X-Men, or is a mutant, with again a very sort of specific set of powers, and we have this sort of idea of how to make all of those things fit together. And sometimes you just see like, oh, we need something here, like something. So we had like Vermin, who is a very sort of smash and go sort of a character. We have Lady Bullseye, who isn't necessarily a villain, but who is sort of Maka sort of looks up to her, but she's sort of trying to check, I don't know, to check Maka's idea of justice and heroing and sort of her sense of right and wrong and how easy it's going to be to just jump into the criminal underworld in New York and be like, I want to fix it. So she's not necessarily a villain. She's just like an interesting mentor somehow. I don't know. So yeah, that's how we got it all together.
Is there some specific characters that they say, no, you can use right now because we are using other comics?
I mean, there's always going to be like something, but again, like with the mutants and the X-Men, that's like I did Realm of X, which was one of the X series of like two years ago or something. I don't quite remember. And we knew we wanted a team. Like we had this idea of a bunch of mutants together in a like faraway realm. And I think we started with like 12 people on the list, and we were sort of just like, we can make it work with these people, and then we could sort of chop it down until we can get a nice sort of collection of interesting personalities. And there we had characters that we couldn't use, but it's always sort of, as long as like that's one of the nice things about the Marvel universe, like there is usually a substitute that you can reach for. I think the only one you can't really, or yeah, maybe you could, like Thanos, if you needed like a hugely powerful galactic something, there are some alternatives if you needed. So I think like the beauty is just to have, like, if you have an idea where you want to go, and you know it needs to be in this sort of this realm of the Marvel universe. So like when you're dealing with Thor, who is exceptionally powerful, you need a very specific lineup of villains that could handle him. And then you need to find some sort of interesting way to set up whatever fight is going to happen. And hopefully, like the best part of any sort of, especially the huge mythological ones, is just to if you're wondering who is behind it, if you can make it both believable and unexpected, if you know what I mean. Like it's going to be both surprising, but then you're going to have the feeling of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Of course Thanos would want that, or of course, Galactus would have this idea. That's always the sort of, always feels good.
Yeah, I bet. That reminds me of how does Marvel allow you to create your own characters in the story, or do you even want to do that?
Oh yeah, sure. Like we can do pretty much whatever we want, but I think it's like if I went to Marvel and I said like, oh, I have an idea for a new book with a new character, that wouldn't necessarily, because they need to make sure that it all works,
Yeah, exactly, of course.
And if you want to, especially in the Marvel comics, like if you want to have the sort of power of the reference, or the sort of intertextuality of it, because if you can pull out the Thanos, that will be an emotional something for the reader too, right? So it's easy to sort of play around with that. And sometimes that can be more powerful than to build something yourself.
Yeah,
but they're
of
all
course.
but I mean, I just deliver a script, and if there's a character, then there's a new character. And I usually we have a discussion on where we're going, and if I say like, oh, this entire 10-issue arc is going to be based off of fighting this new thing, that could be perfectly fine. It's just we would just need to make sure that everything sort of, we have tension, and we have we're not going to lose some people along the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How with something ongoing like Spider-Girl or something like that, how far ahead do you plan the story? Do you know like and how specifically do you have like these like kind of like more abstract points that these want to do, or is it like really specific where it's going, like issue 17 is going to be this, and issue how is it for you?
Well, I mean, especially with Marvel, because what Marvel tends to do is that they'll be like, oh, we're going to start with, say, 10 issues, and then we'll see how it works, or we'll see how it sells. And so there's always a sort of like, we know where we could go if we get the issues to do it. But we also need to make sure that, like, if we would rather close and like if we need to stop at 10 or whatever, you just need to make sure that it sort of feels right. And sometimes, like with Carnage, we did, I think it was 10 issues, and then we did another 3 for Venom War, and it wasn't necessarily like that the Carnage we were selling what we were supposed to do, and it was a sort of it worked as a book, but like within the Marvel universe, it made sense that we would have a sort of ending and then a new beginning of Carnage. So sometimes it's a creative decision, and then we have like an idea of like, when we get to this point, we will need to do something with the book, whether it's going, but I mean, some writers will be like, oh, issue 17, I want to do this. I don't, just because I know how things can turn, and I know that, like, sometimes you need to compress 4 issues of ideas down to 1 and just make it work.
Does it ever catch you off guard, like something like the Carnage run? Like, do you know well beforehand that, okay, this is going to be the final issue, or does it sometimes come like just around the corner?
I think most of the time we know, but it's like it could be just like it's comics. It's all nonsense. Like my first comic, the first comic I did for Marvel was Jane Foster Valkyrie, and I'd written like 4 issues or something, and then the pandemic hit, and we had like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, everything was just on pause. Nothing was printing. I think they had like 4 or 5 books or something that actually went to print, while the rest was just like hovering in air. So, and what we did was we had a pause there, and at some point we released issue 10 as a digital thing, and then, like, after the pandemic, it was also out as a print version for those who wanted it. And then we sort of stopped Valkyrie, and we started the King in Black Valkyrie. And then, like, that was a whole thing. And you just have to sort of, like, we got there in the end, but we did it through a bunch of different miniseries instead of one ongoing, which is just like, that's just how it is from time to time.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, it was certainly, I assume, very nice that you at least got to continue the story in some form. Like,
it is a very odd job, this.
Yeah.
Like, it is I don't know, and that was also one of those things where I was just like, oh my God, I'm writing for Marvel, and it's out there, and I feel good about it, and and then the pandemic hit, and I don't know how you had, like, I was like, when this place locked down, I was like, part of me wanted to, go to the cabin, buy a bunch of guns, get ready. But like that is like a huge part of me, which is like, the doomsday, is that what we're doing? Like, I'm ready. And it's an odd thing when you're sort of like, this was the dream. I had it. Now it's just out there. Floating around. Let's see what happens. But luckily we got to keep going.
You got through it, and I'm certainly, like, in future, when something like that happens, you probably are like more ready for it, in a sense, because you like started almost like, and you got hit right away with a pandemic, like.
Yeah, it's
like a trial through fire.
It's just that thing of like knowing that like, if you want to do something professionally, like, the one thing, it might feel like you're sort of your big break or whatever, but there will usually, if you're good at something, there will usually be something at some point that will you just trust that if you keep going, you'll find some other opportunities. But like in the moment, it obviously feels like when I did the Batman thing, like I wrote the Batman thing, I sent it off, and then I was just like, oh, I didn't like the editor quit, and I was sort of like I sent like an email every week being like, hey, are we doing something here? And it's easy to sort of think that like that's it, like I'll never write comics again. But in my experience, like as long as you sort of keep at it, and also I realized like in general, personally, as a trying to be a human, it's not a great idea to put all of your self-worth on an external project. You know what I mean?
That is absolutely true. Yeah.
So yeah, which is it's easy to do.
Yeah. I especially imagine with like releasing something like comic books that all have your name on, that then it very easily can become like, and maybe in a way it is like part of you that you start to too much do what you said, like.
Yeah, and it is a sort of sometimes like because it is a demanding job, and sometimes you will end up doing like crazy rewrites and like that was that weekend you didn't do anything except just, knock your head against the wall. And there is a like a petty little idiot part of you like, well, at least I'm writing Marvel. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and then like at least I can whip that out. If I ever go to like a high school reunion, I can be like, "Well, I write comics for Marvel,"
Oh,
and it's so stupid. But
but if it
it is
gets to you
there.
through the day, then why
Yeah,
not?
it's but then again, at some point you have to sort of look at your life and be like, maybe I should do what all the people say about self-love and touching grass and all that nonsense. So I
That
try
is so.
to like I have a cabin in the forest, and I spend a lot of time in the forest with a fire, just staring, like just being very much present, and
Oh, yeah.
just chopping the firewood and getting the fucking place heated enough to be able to sleep, and wondering what that noise is. Like, what is that? That serial killer or bear or mouse, which is usually what it is.
Or all three together.
Like on a good day, it's all three.
Teaming
Actually,
up.
I've learned. I keep talking about this fucking forest and the cabin, but I have learned, because they're all fucking insane, the people who live there, in the best possible way. I just learned that you don't fuck with them, and you don't tell anyone what they're up to, because they're up to some shit. But you just sort of look the other way and be like, hey, it's good to see you. Let's have some coffee.
Yeah,
But
and then like a couple of decades later, you can release a comic book about weird people in forest.
Yes. I am
Not
working
based on
one.
real stories at all.
Not even close.
No.
I had a conversation with some neighbors in the forest, and they're very angry about something another neighbor is doing. And at some point, one of them took up a lighter and flicked it, and then went, "Well, we can always," and we all laughed. And I was like, did we agree to do arson? What did we do? Just like, well, I don't know, but it's funny, and we're here, and it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's nice to sometimes sort of pull your head out of the I don't know, the stupidity that is this world, and try to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're talking so much, and this could go on and on and on. But if we try to end this in some decent time, and we're talking about 2 hours already, so the one last question is there some Marvel character that you like to write next, or some future?
I think the one that I really want to do is like Wolverine.
Oh.
But like a proper old, moody, cranky Wolverine, I would love that. That would be fucking fantastic. I haven't quite like that's the thing. Like it needs to sort of align. All of the things needs to work out, and I would need to like because they obviously have some sort of idea of especially all the mutants where they're at whatever point. But I think that would be really fun. That's one of the that's one of the sort of, and I've never touched him in any way. Because usually, like the first issue I ever wrote for Marvel, I had Spider-Man in there, which was fun because Jason Aaron, he sent me a message just going, "Did you write your first Spider-Man line yet?" And I was like, "No, is that a thing?" It's like, "Yes, I think you'll never forget it," and he was right. But it is a sort of because there's this sort of specific humorous sort of tone thing you have to hit with Spider-Man. But like when you're writing for Marvel, it's easy to sort of pull in your favorite characters here and there and sort of make whatever you want happen if you want to make it happen. But Wolverine, I've never been able to reel him in.
Yeah. I hope you get it someday. It would be great to see. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to tell our listeners where they can find you, your socials, and what books do you have to plug or anything like that?
Yeah, let's see. Honestly, just I don't know, Google my name and you'll find me. I'm on Instagram from time to time. Like I don't know, I try to, for my sanity, I try to stay away from the socials, but I do check my DMs on Instagram and like TikTok. I don't do Twitter anymore just because of the whole
smart
Nazi
choice
thing. Yeah. Now I'm on Blue Sky like occasionally. But like if you wanted to get a hold of me, that's pretty simple. Just send me a DM on Instagram and I'll see it at some point. Otherwise, Spider-Girl, Catwoman. I'm very excited about the Catwoman. I think it was issue 79 that just came out. It's the beginning of a new arc, and I think it's going to be a good one. It feels very good, and we've just finished like a whole an arc where Selena has been dealing with a bunch of characters from her past that are not known to the reader at all. But now we're pulling in sort of more of the Gotham characters, and I think people are going to enjoy. I think they're going to enjoy it. So Catwoman, Spider-Girl. I think probably by the time this is aired, there will be an announcement of when the Nightmare Before Christmas book is coming out, which is a fun one. I think I got a press release for it earlier today, so I suppose that's going to be out. But it was announced at some point, we just didn't have a release date. And I think Battle Action, I think this is one of those. First of all, this is the first cover I've ever painted.
So it's beautiful.
I feel thank you. Feel very strongly that people should pick up Battle Action. But we just the hardcover of the Battle Action collection came out today, and we're recording this on the 24th of September. And it's such a good book. And it's Garth Ennis and Brian K. Vaughan and at some point me. So I highly recommend people picking up if you're interested in military history in any way and like war stories, because it's just such a fun. It's a good fun time with
with war
setting. With war.
As you do.
War has everything, it's all there. It's all the absurdity and all the fun stuff and all the violence you can ever need. It's right there.
Everything that a growing child needs.
Oh yeah.
Thank you so much, Torunn. This has been absolute pleasure, and I hope we get to talk again someday. And
hope I get to see you in Finland.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hoping there's some other Comic-Con at some point. That would be great.
Nick actually did meet you back in the Comic-Con, and he has your signed comic books back there on his shelf. But I didn't make it that time. I had some other things, but this was
more important thing than Heroes Comic-Con Helsinki. It's very disappointing.
Yeah.
These priorities. I don't know.
You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
I have to check myself for next year.
You should.
Anyway.
This has been a delight. It's so nice to meet you guys, and I hope we can do this again later when I have new books and more nonsense to
Absolutely.
talk about.
Absolutely. And yeah, to our listeners, you know where to find us. We are on all socials, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Marvel Podcast Suomi. And if you need to reach us, we have email marvelpodcastsuomi@gmail.com. We have a Discord server. You can ask us on our DMs if you want to come chat with us. And then somewhere on the screen, there's the link to our, and also in the description, if you are a Spotify listener, there's a link to our merch shop if you want to buy stuff with our logo on. I have my
And the
own.
one very important thing to say: remember the sensitive ears. Sensitive ears.
Yes, sensitive ears. That's our thing here. What else? Yeah, I have my own YouTube channel at Ossi Kuvakarju, and Nikke has his own at Leffahullu. We mostly talk movies on those channels. I sometimes talk a little bit about comics too. And of course, if someone who doesn't speak Finnish is listening to this, those are all in Finnish. But you know, there's never too late time to start learning this
Yeah,
very
and
easy and intuitive language.
yeah, and YouTube is so wonderful these days that there is subtitles. So I have at least English and some Norwegian subtitles,
Uh-huh.
but YouTube do themselves, so I'm not really sure how good they are. So don't know.
What do you do when you have, because one of the things I love about Finnish is that you have words for the strangest of things. So it'll be like a huge long word and it'll be like, oh, that means something exceptionally specific and it's not translatable in any other way.
How do we deal with that?
No, I
I
mean,
guess we
that
just
just
try
it's
to
just
explain it what it means.
I just
I mean,
enjoy the idea of the AI at some point trying to try to translate your
oh yeah,
Finnish and being like, well, this word means,
maybe
you
that
know,
could finally kill
when
it.
when you are cold but you're not wearing socks, that's the word for that. I don't know. Like it's a great language. I think generally as a writer, I do find like a language with a huge vocabulary of strange fucking things. That's the best possible thing.
Oh yeah, it's this language is so weird. On a side note, I am currently working with like immigrants who are trying to learn Finnish, and I'm not a professional teacher. I just help with small things, and they ask such a great questions, and I'm always like, oh my God, I don't know this language. I just speak it.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. But yes, thank you again for everybody for everything great, and we will see you, hear you again in our next video podcast, whatever.
Hi.
Thank you guys.